So again, welcome to GPLH's webinar on site visits, and I'd like to introduce Michelle Neptune, one of our program committee meeting members and board member, and she will take it from here.
Hi, thank you all for joining us. I'm thrilled that we have Melissa Clark today. Melissa is a colleague and friend of mine at United Way of the Dutchess Orange region. She is our Vice President of Community Impact here. She's been in the nonprofit sector focused around program development, management, strategy for over 12 years, including 2 years as an AmeriCorps Vista. And we were just talking about the Vista SHIP program and how great that is. Melissa holds a BA in International Relations from SUNY New Paltz, an MA in Social and Public Policy, and a graduate certificate in Community Advocacy from SUNY Empire. She is a board member of the Orange County, I just lost it, sorry, the Orange County Youth Bureau, a co-chair of the Bringing Agencies Together Coalition. That's BAT. If you're not a member, talk to Melissa. She's a member of the United Way New York State Public Policy Committee, the Dutchess County Regional Chamber of Commerce Nonprofit Committee, and the Junior League of Poughkeepsie, among others. Melissa has been named a 40 under 40 by the Dutchess County Regional Chamber of Commerce and SUNY New Paltz. She's also an adjunct professor, instructor specializing in communications at Marist College. So she's got a lot of experience. She does perform site visits for our United Way, and I think that she'll have a lot to say about site visits. So Melissa, you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you so much to the grant professionals of Lower Hudson Valley for having me. And it's great to see so many familiar faces and see so many friends and meet some new friends. So I really do encourage you to reach out to me after today's program if you have any questions or if there's any resources that I can provide. All right, so feel free to ask questions as we go through, or I can ask them at the end. I'm very informal in my presentation style. And again, I'm just really excited. I was racking my brain, thinking about the things I've learned and being on both sides, right, of receiving site visits from our state funders, from our federal funders, from our local funders, as well as being a funder ourselves and requiring an annual site visit. So thinking about that, today we're focusing on our successful site visits and putting your best foot forward. So just a little bit about United Way of the Dutchess Orange region. I'm sure you all know a lot about it from Michelle already, so I'll just give a quick overview. Together we fight for the health, education, and financial stability of every person in our community. And as I know Allison mentioned earlier that you also work with our sister organization, United Way of Westchester Putnam. So it's really great that there's United Way involvement in this committee too, through them and through Michelle. So we are very focused around providing community investment around health, education, financial stability, as well as veteran programming. So how do we do it? We have a very unique program model. Each year we launch a community conversation and conduct a community needs assessment around the emerging issues that are in our community. So we've looked at the opioid crisis, we've looked at veterans' needs. Most recently, we looked at food insecurity, we've looked at the housing crisis, mental health for youth, looking at learning loss. So we try to think about what the most emerging and urgent issues are in our community on a yearly basis, and then we adjust our funding priorities in that vein. We also added in a letter of intent process. We're in our second year now, and the reason we did that was because we wanted to look from an equity standpoint. And this was also an initiative of United Way Worldwide, which of course we're under the umbrella of. And so thinking about our sort of many steps, many hours, a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of resources going into putting in the applications, we wanted to think about how we could lessen that for our different nonprofits that maybe have one paid staff, if any, as well as our 150 community grant reviewers who actually make the funding decisions, and then they bring those recommendations up to our community impact committee, and finally for board approval. So After we have the letter of intent process, which we make very simple, 500 words, what is your program? What will it do? Who will it serve? Right. And then we make sure that that is in fact in alignment with our funding priorities, which we're going to look at in a second. Then we release our RFPs, and right now we have one more week, so we can see them all working in the portal. But of course, I'm sure many of you, and I know Michelle and I always talk about this, many of you wait till the last day to submit, which, for the funder side makes us very anxious, but they always do come through. So we understand if that's your style. We release the request for proposals. Then we have our 150 grant reviewers go through. They each review a 5. And if any of you are interested in being a grant reviewer, the deadline is passed, but I will extend it to all of you. So if you're interested in being on the other side, we're always looking for volunteers that have that expertise. And I know a lot of folks that are on the development side say that it's very helpful to kind of think about things through the other side. So after 150 grant reviewers do their work online, we then have panels for each category: health, education, financial stability, and veterans needs, that we bring together separately. Then we bring that up to our community impact committee, who has the allocations, the dollars and cents for a 7-hour meeting. Make those final decisions and bring that to our board of directors. And then we go into a 1-year funding process, and starting on July 1st, aligned with our fiscal year. So that's a little bit about what our process is. I'm sure, every funder has their own process, right? So ours is definitely a little bit complex, but it's very important for us as the community fund, as an organization that is made up of thousands of small donors, that we really have all of the community input in our process. And like I said, we'll just quickly go over the funding priorities here at United Way. We focus around health, increasing access to healthy food for families in our community. We also look at, under the veterans goal of program staff and volunteers will increase access to affordable housing and legal services for veterans and their families. Under financial stability, we look to improve access to resources and alleviate short-term financial crises in order to increase local families' economic position. Under education, we look to increase opportunities for positive youth development and literacy services. And then we also have a second priority area under education, in which we look to develop opportunities for lifelong learning to increase skill-based development. And of course, you can read the outcomes alongside. So I want to jump into the next part of our presentation today, because I know lots of you receive site visits and want to be prepared for them. So who is your funder, right? Are they a federal funder? Are they local? Are they state? They're all going to have different priorities, right? So we've had state funders, the ones that have wanted to come and look through our books. We've had state funders that have wanted to just go on programmatic site visits and meet all the community leaders, and then give us a report afterwards and provide us that feedback. We've had local funders that don't require any site visits. We've had funders that require virtual site visits, right? It really runs a gambit. And thanks to Michelle's incredible work here and all the grants that she brings in, we have a lot of funders, right? So we're always making sure that, of course, we're meeting all the requirements as we would require for our fundees, and just thinking about what their expectations are, right? So if you're getting a state funder, they might want to look at your timesheets. Is this program person, are they really spending 20% of their time devoted to such and such program? Maybe they want to meet with your participants and find that out. So obviously, if you have a question, you need to ask, right? That's the most important thing. Just making sure you're prepared. And I would hope that none of your funders do surprise site visits, because that sounds stressful. We don't do them. However, if they do, be prepared. If that is one of the parts of your grant contract and grant agreement with that funder, you need to make sure that you're always in compliance, which you should be anyway, but making sure all of your paperwork is in order. And so that if they did just show up at any point, that you would be ready to welcome them with open arms and have everything ready to go and really impress them. Thinking about who from your organization should attend is also going to depend again on who is visiting your program. So if they're really just wanting to speak to participants, they want to make sure, you say you have this youth program that happens 3 to 5 in the gym. Maybe they want to just come by and see, yes, that in fact is happening. Or maybe they want to really look again at your books and just get a sense of what's going on throughout your whole organization. Of course, it's also going to depend on, how large the grant is too. So, I would always make sure you have your programmatic and your fiscal people on standby. Make sure that you have people that are going to have all the answers. I work very closely with our financial person, but I don't know her job, she doesn't know my job. We work together, we complement one another. So if there's ever a site visit that's coming up that I think is going to involve the financial piece, I will make sure that we are both available. So again, in making sure that you are extremely prepared and know what the expectations are, if it's all programmatic, all fiscal, combination thereof. Maybe you want to include your executive director. Maybe you don't have time to include them. I'm sure they're super busy, but even just for the first hour or something, so they get a really good feel of the culture of your organization, and again, feel really welcome, because this funder is making an investment in your organization, and they want to make sure that they feel appreciated, right? So, and I'm not going to, tell horror stories or anything like that. I am going to mention a couple of examples of what not to do as we go through. But again, just making sure that you are really demonstrating that you are a competent organization, you are being responsible with the donor dollars, with the public dollars that you are receiving, and making sure that you're making a great impression and doing the programming that you say you're doing, and that you're welcoming the funders. And again, if you have questions, just ask. And sometimes I know, we all have different relationships with funders. Even if they, maybe they don't respond the first time, we have lots of state contracts, and I know folks get really busy. Just make sure you have all the answers and that you're prepared. Everyone wants to see you succeed. That's why they gave you the dollars. Thinking about that relationship building again. So we hate finding things out in the paper, as those that are on the funder side probably would agree with me, right? And so if there is some, significant change that is happening in your organization, just pick up the phone. Also, if there's some controversy that's going on at your organization, something is happening in your organization, could be good, could be bad, right? Maybe you just have a change in leadership. That's great. Just call us. We just really like to find out, because it shows us, it demonstrates to us that we are your priority, that we are, the people that you are making the first call to, and that you really value us. So I would definitely strongly encourage that. For us too, we've been in situations where, suddenly we're sending emails and the executive director and the program director's emails are just bouncing back, right? We've never had a call. We've no idea what's going on over there. And now we're concerned, and maybe it was just an oversight. Maybe the organization recently had some really great changes in leadership, but nobody notified us. And for us, not having that notification is just making us anxious, because we think, well, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of oversight over there if the leadership is changing and no one is notifying us, no one's updating the contact information. Also making sure the contact information is up to date, right? This happens, staff changes happen, and certainly they've happened a lot in nonprofit and a lot of fields during the pandemic, right? So again, just making sure that we have that information so that we can have that point of contact. And again, it just shows common courtesy and shows the value that we have, and that this is a two-way relationship. Of course, your site visit should not be the only interaction that you're having. We're hoping that you're going to be sending us those thank you emails, sharing stories with us, maybe tagging us on your social media, sending us photos, just telling us some of the great things that are happening. I love when I receive a letter that's not prompted, right? Or a testimonial that's not prompted. There's one, for example, and I'll just, give a quick story. again, not prompted at all. We received a letter from NAMI, right, who were funding, and it was just, I mean, we were all choking back tears, right? It was a letter that a teacher had written NAMI, that they were able to learn, you know, the skills around the Ending the Silence program. And so when then she had a student that had suicidal ideation and came to her, she was prepared. She knew how to handle the situation. He was able to receive help and even had hospitalization as a result. And she said if she had not been, you know, on that NAMI training, she would not have known how to handle that situation. So a story like that, you know, we're all just like, wow, the investment that we're making in this program is having such impact. It's saving lives. You know, the next week we had a board meeting. Guess what story we told at the board meeting, right? And so for us, it's demonstrating that we're making a great donor investment of the dollars that we're receiving. And of course, our board members are all donors, they're all leadership donors. And it's also, you know, for NAMI, you know, I'm telling you all here, right? You all probably have a better impression of NAMI, or maybe you haven't heard of them now. You're like, what is NAMI, right? And so our board also, you know, received that positive interaction. So again, please just communicate. And maybe, you know, maybe it's a small grant. Maybe you have $5,000. It's your first year grant and you're thinking, well, that's a small grant. I have other, you know, bigger fish. You know, maybe that small grant is a pilot and this grantor is, you know, taking a chance on you. And after you do great work with this $5,000 grant and really steward them, next year there, you know, another pot of money opens up and they think, well, you know, this grantee, they were new to us and we were extremely impressed. And now they have these other programs that align with this new money we have, where, you know, we're going to give them a gift or what have you, right? So just thinking about long-term strategy, I would say, in all of your funding interactions. And then again, making sure that you have your checklist, you're all prepared, you have your folder, you know, you have your program folks timesheets, you know, you have if you have intake forms for participants, whatever you need, you have, it's all prepared. You're following all the protocols that are necessary. You have hard copies. You have information, and you know, if they're coming in, you know, physically coming in, a lot of us, of course, are still doing lots of virtual stuff. Today is wonderful that it's virtual. Love that I don't, you know, not driving an hour, what have you, right? So, you know, when your funder comes in and because, you know, say it's a food security program, it's very specific. That might be all they know about and I just got the internet connection is unstable, which is the worst message you see when you're giving a presentation. So can you all hear me? Okay, good. Yay. So sorry, lost my train of thought there for a second. So when you have your funder that's coming in, you know, maybe this is the staff that's working on your program. They're your compliance officers, right? They probably didn't read your grant. Maybe they did, but maybe that was somebody else, especially if it's a larger funder, like a state grantor or something. So they might not know a whole lot about your organization. Maybe they did read the grant, but it was 6 months ago and they read 100 of them, right? So it's a really good opportunity to tell them the breadth of your work, and so that you have the opportunity again, because maybe they think, well, you know, we can't fund this because of these restrictions, but I know another funder that can do, you know, this for you, or I think you should apply to this RFP that's coming out in 2 months. You know, it's really about the relationship building, if I can't impart that enough, and making those connections, because it's all about making long-term investments in your organization, in your program, and that can be done through making sure folks know what you do, knew all the great stuff that you're doing. And just, you all probably have wondered, and yes, we talk, right? So if I find something out in the paper about a certain organization, or I hear something and I know somebody else is funding them and we're both significantly funding them, chances are one of us is going to pick up the phone and call the other and say, hey, have you heard such and such? You know, what are your thoughts? Do you have concerns? What steps are you taking? Right? So if your organization is received really positively, we're also going to have those conversations, right? So when we all get together and chat, again, I'll just go back to NAMI, right? So NAMI is doing great work. I just read this letter, etc. Right? So you're going to have those really positive interactions. Again, you want to make sure that all your funders are thinking of you that way and not the other way. And that's all about the relationship building. It's all about accountability, and it's all about having that two-way communication. So again, you'll all be prepared. You've already asked all your questions in advance, and they may have those other resources. Okay, you probably are like, how could she even put that up there? That would never happen. Yes, it happens. I've had several site visits, in person and virtual, where fundees have said, you know, you decreased our funding, you don't give enough money to the program, you know, I don't know what you're thinking, stuff like that, right? And yes, I'm sure that's all valid, and I would love to know that, but that's not the appropriate forum. If you want to have those discussions, you know, set up a meeting with me, maybe have a phone call and say, hey, there's something sensitive I need to talk to you about, because again, that is good for me to know, because you know, with pandemic funding, right? Some of us receive some more unrestricted funding or what have you. So you could think like, oh, you know, this program, you know, we used to be able to invest 10,000, now we've only been able to invest 5, but then say you get another pot of funding that's less restricted, and you can think like, okay, well, you know what? I'm able to give them some funding out of this new pot of money. Again, that's great for me to know, and I can keep that in the back of my mind. But just don't do it on a site visit, because it just leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And maybe I've invited board members too, right? If I have board members that are hearing this, it's just not going to be good interaction for anyone. So brag, 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 right? I love this graphic I found when I was, you know, doing my not very advanced, you know, Googling of images. So tell the donors what you're doing, you know, so you can get more money and show the important impact that you're making. The whole point of this relationship is that we're investing in you, and we want to hear the amazing things that you're doing. We want to, you know, make the world a better place. We want to make a difference. That's why we're all in this work, right? So we want to hear the incredible work that you're doing. So tell us, you know, this is your opportunity to shine. And of course, all year round, when you tell us all the testimonials and the letters and social media posts and everything else, but this is a really great time to, you know, try to bring tears to our eyes, right? Because this is the time where we're, you know, we're thinking like, yes, we get the reports, make sure your reports are in time. That's a whole different conversation. But this is the time where you can really impart to us, you know, maybe directly with your participants, or just by telling these really incredible stories, the work that we're doing. And it's one thing to read it in a report, but it's another thing to be there and to see it in action. Ask those questions, build that relationship, engage board members and volunteers that are attending. We have a community impact council, and they, you know, throughout the year, they engage with us by attending our site visits, and many of them are donors, right? So this is the time for them to also feel like these are the great, by giving my money to United Way, I know I'm doing all this incredible work with these relationships. We've had board members too come on the site visits, so it's a really, really great time to be able to demonstrate that you're, you know, making this incredible impact. Again, what not to do. Don't ghost us, especially on Zoom, right? It's happened. Don't like that. Nobody likes being ghosted. So please, if something's happening and suddenly your executive director was going to do the site visit and now they're out sick or whatever, just tell us, we can reschedule. Just don't ghost us. Test the technology. Make sure you all know how to use Zoom. Don't come on late. You know, we've had all that stuff, right? Make sure everyone knows if they're supposed to be at a place. If it's in person, everyone knows the address. You know, I mean, these things, they sound simple, but I've seen it all. Yes, we have a lot of programs that we invest in. We invest in over 40 programs a year, and we visit every single one every year. So I promise you, I've seen it all. And yeah, you all get it. I'm not going to harp on it any longer, but just make sure you're prepared to brag about all the incredible work that you are doing. And, you know, if you can bring your board members, that's wonderful too. It really shows how much you value us as funders, that you're bringing, you know, your most essential volunteers and, you know, folks that are involved in your organization, your program. So we love to meet board members. volunteers, what have you. It's always extremely impressive to us. And just, yeah, a quick reminder, we are here to support you. We are investing in you. That's why we have this relationship. We're not here to play gotcha or anything like that. We're here to see all the incredible work that you're doing with the dollars that we've invested in your program. We want to see that we're making a difference. We want to see lives are being impacted. We want to see, that we're doing just incredible work around, for us, health education, and financial stability. I know you all wear 1 million hats, and it's probably more than that. But again, putting your best foot forward is a way for you to create this long-term investment in your programs. And again, like I said, please invite your staff, your board, try to just really create that welcoming culture, so folks know, wow, this is a great organization that we're investing in. And again, they can thank, but you have other resources or other sources of funding, other streams, maybe we'll be able to invest in some other programs or what have you. It's all about that relationship. And, everyone loves a thank you email, hint, hint. You always say to people, if you're applying for a job, right, you do your thank you email after your interview. It's not an interview, but a thank you email is very nice. I probably get like 2 out of 40, right? So it's not the norm, but it, as you can see, resonates, right, with folks. So thank you emails are great. Maybe after the site visit, it just sparks some new ideas. And now you have some questions. Maybe you want to make some programmatic changes and you're not sure if that would be okay with the funder. Have that discussion. Maybe you have some new ideas. Again, have that discussion. And then afterwards, maybe you thought about a participant or you talked about a participant. You can share, more information about that through success stories and throughout the year. And just this way, it's not one year we have a conversation and then you put in an application. But, I know you all wear your hats, it's fine. But going the step further can, again, just really resonate. And like I said, we all talk, and it'll continue to make that positive impact for your organization throughout the community. So that is my presentation. I would love any questions you all may have. I'm going to stop sharing just one moment, but I just want to make sure you all see my contact information. I will provide this PowerPoint afterwards. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. If you want to be a grants reviewer, reach out to me. If you're just curious and want to pick my brain about anything, reach out to me. And I can guarantee, Michelle and I work together, and she can find time in my calendar if I'm not available. So I just really appreciate your time. It was really great to meet you all. And please do take me up on reaching out, and I'm just going to stop sharing if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
So I have a question. You had said don't gripe about decreasing funding, which I completely get, and I understand it's not the forum. But what if you have big ideas about your program and expanding it? Is it appropriate to sort of say, maybe next year we'd like to do X, Y, Z, or, we're really looking for funding? Okay.
That's absolutely wonderful.
Okay.
You can show that it's really just demonstrating that you are so appreciative of the funding that you're receiving and you want to do more. Yes, absolutely. Just not in a way that's complaining. And yeah. Again, I've had a lot of meetings over the years. I'm doing it a while. Deborah?
So I just want to thank you for reminding me to share the love. It's, like what you're talking about, the thank you note. I know that there have been times where I've just been so excited about something that happened that I just shot off a note to the funder. And I realized that was actually really important for the person on the other end to get that. And I haven't done it in a long time because I'm feeling swamped. And, so I just want to tell you that you're saying that a number of times. It's reminding me that's really, really important, because it's a human being on the other end. They're working just as hard as we are, as everybody in the program. So just want to say thank you for that.
Thanks, Deborah. I appreciate that. And like I said, it's not the norm, but it really resonates with people. So thank you. Allison?
Yeah, can you say something about time frame? the difference between an in-person visit or a Zoom, how long it lasts, and do you structure it? Who's doing the agenda, the structuring?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would expect the funder to do the structuring of it, because they have the expectations, they have the questions that they want to meet. Our site visits are typically about 45 minutes. We've been doing most of them virtual, but if we can go in person now, we are doing that as well. A lot of the programs that we invest in, virtual makes sense, because we can't meet with the participants if it's around financial stability. Obviously, there's a lot of confidentiality involved. So we would just be sitting down with program staff anyway. So then this has made it accessible to a lot of our volunteers who may live further away to also attend. But I've had site visits from New York State where we've also had one room for 8 hours together, right? So it just really varies. I just, again, making sure what the expectations are. I've also had funders from New York State where we went to various locations throughout the day. And if you feel like the funder is being sort of vague, just ask. You know what I mean? Like, we're probably not being intentionally vague. We probably just have a lot to do. And we're just like, oh, right, I got to go out and visit that program. And, we don't know that we're, being aloof or what have you. So just ask. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Laura?
Hi, I wanted to ask you, can you talk a little bit about the differences between a potential funder and a funder that's already funding your organization, and what kinds of different things to prepare or questions you should ask between those two?
Sure, that's a great question. So I personally haven't been in the position where a potential funder has had, a site visit with me, probably more of like a kind of get to know you meeting. So I would think for, when you already have the funding, you want to, yay, you got the funding. That's great. They're your funder. Make sure, like we talked about, you continue to follow up, have those conversations, build that relationship. Make it a marriage, right? Make it a long-term relationship. A potential funder, right? I don't know why I'm using these analogies, but it's more dating, right? So you're getting to know them. And so this is an opportunity for you to demonstrate all the different work that you're doing, demonstrating the different programs, seeing what might be a good fit. Maybe you're sending a letter of intent. And also respect what the funder asks, right? Some funders say, send us a letter of intent, please no phone calls. In that case, I wouldn't call them, because they're very specific about that. Maybe it would be okay though to, with your letter of intent, still include a nice cover letter or a nice email, right? To try to and welcome them to set up the meeting. Say, and after you review this letter of intent, we'd really love to have a Zoom with you, or just get to see how our priorities align or what have you. So I think there's definitely that opportunity, but I would push it to the extent that you can to just show you're being super friendly and welcoming, but obviously not to the point where they're like, hey, we said don't do that. So yeah, definitely seeing where you might find that synergy and alignment with a potential funder. It's a great question.
Thanks, Melissa. That's helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
So are there certain, oh, I'm sorry, I see Julia's hand is up. Go ahead, Julia.
Hi, thanks, Melissa, for that presentation. We really appreciate it. So coming from a funder side, so through Dutchess County Planning and Development, we administer the Agency Partner Grant Program, which provides funding to 501c3 nonprofit organizations that demonstrate that they meet a community need. So it's similar to what United Way offers, and we have outcome-based measurements that we will review from the organizations to see if they're meeting those outcomes throughout the year. So we're in the process of actually doing our site visits now. So we wanted to find out from you if you have any best practices that you can offer from the funder side on ways that we can prepare for the site visits with the nonprofit organizations that we fund.
Oh, sure. Love that question, Julia. Thanks. And thanks again for being on here. Yeah, so I think, obviously making sure that everyone on your team that is attending it has some background information about the organization. I always have the same sort of 10 questions that I ask on each site visit. We do ours a little bit informally. So when I first start a site visit, basically I'll set off all the expectations, if it's a Zoom, the Zoom link is on everyone's calendar already in advance. If I will be going on I'll be starting the site visit 15 minutes early. Making sure that we're just demonstrating we're very professional. We're not going to show up late on you either. Making sure that my team members that are also attending are, aware of the program. But if I have volunteers, I'm not going to expect them to do the research before. So I will say, I'll start first do introductions, make sure everyone knows each other. Please make sure that is done, because especially if people do jump on a few minutes late from either side, which happens on Zoom, what have you. People need to all just know each other, just make it very friendly atmosphere. Make sure you all do your introductions. I usually just call on everyone so not everyone's talking at once, and then I'll set the parameters. You can expect this meeting to be about 45 minutes. We're going to be talking about hearing about what your program looks like, hearing some of the outcomes that you've met so far, how the participants that you're reaching. We'll probably ask a couple success stories, and just making sure. And again, if there's anything as we go throughout that they're not sure of, they'll just say okay, great, I'll get back to you on that. And then all of our evaluators, our council members, will have the same site visit assessment tool that they'll all be, checking off as they go through. So I'll just make sure that, all of our grantees are, answering the same questions, but at the same time, because we are, a private funder, we're able to have a little bit more leeway than your side in government. And so I love to, if a conversation starts going a certain way, I like to get more information, right? So if they say, gun violence has really been plaguing our city, this program, has been able to provide interventions that have reduced that, I might follow up, well, what sort of interventions, and, what hours of the day, are your team members working? I just want to know more, because I'm excited about all the incredible work that I'm hearing is being done. But my first question is always, please tell us a little bit about your program and your organization. Not everyone is up to speed, so we have some volunteers on here, so everyone, can start with the same information. So just making sure that everyone's starting the same place, everyone has the same tools, and everyone is prepared on your side, I think is helpful. And if you are able to have those more candid conversations, I'm just not quite sure, having those. So again, you can just really put all that together in your notes, and making sure that you're demonstrating to the folks on your side that you're using these public dollars in the best way. John?
Hi, I was just wanted to say that here at the school where I work, we're going to be having a visit from a longstanding funder, a foundation, just this coming Monday. So this is very appropriate for me. And I've been fortunate in this role as grant writer here at Christopher New York High School to work with a lot of funders who have been very supportive of us over a number of years. So most of the work I've been doing in grants has been renewals. And as part of that, the funders like to visit the school in person, and that's what's going to happen next week. My question was regarding, do you think that a on-site visit is an appropriate time to ask the funder about whether their priorities or funding interests might be changing? Because sometimes funders will look at a different social problem or something that they want to address. And just to make sure that our work here and the funders' work and interests are still in alignment.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I'm glad that we had this meeting today. So you're all set for Monday. I would say absolutely just make sure you're doing it in a delicate and diplomatic way. So they're not being like, feeling like that they're being put on the spot. That's a great question. Allison?
And of course, my question just went out of my head because I was writing something down based on what John just said. Senior moment. Oh, yes, you mentioned like 10 questions or something you always do. Would you maybe add those to the PowerPoint when we send it out or something that might be nice for people just to see your standard questions?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I will definitely put those together. That's a great suggestion.
Thanks.
And sort of along with that, is there anything specific, like if you think about the best site visits you've ever been on, is there anything that really stands out? Like if they, were in person or if they were virtual, if they were in person, if they offered food, if, like what made you connect with the program? Like what was the best way? Was it their
Sure.
enthusiasm? Can you just give
Yeah,
a little
that's
bit more about that?
I love that question. So just off the top of my head, and I've been at United Way for almost 10 years. So I've been doing site visits for a very long time. And I've been receiving site visits for a very long time because like I said, Michelle keeps writing all these fabulous grants that require lots of work on both ends. And so some of the best ones that just off top of my head are, recently on a virtual site visit this past fall, even though it was virtual, it was a youth program, so they were able to include participants. And the participants were, on the one hand, they were prepped, but on the other hand, they were speaking from the heart. And so they talked about just what an amazing impact the program was having on their lives. And so hearing that directly from a participant when it's possible is obviously always like, the gold standard. I mean, right. It's just incredible when you're hearing from a child, like, wow, this, however many thousands of dollars is, giving them something really valuable to do in, those risky after school hours and giving them some really great life skills. Also on that site visit and several others, something that's always incredible. And this is kind of hard to match, but when you have participants that move out of the program and actually into staff roles at your organization, that's also something that I'm always just blown away by. Like there is one, Hudson River Housing, right? So I'm sure you all have worked with them. We have many contracts with them. They do incredible work in our community, and obviously the housing crisis has been so detrimental. About 20% of their staff have been former participants, right, and have lived experience with homelessness and poverty. So we know that they're walking the walk. And when we have one of their site visits and somebody says, yeah, actually that used to be me, right, I was homeless, and the housing navigator was able to help me get on my feet, and now I've worked here for 10 years or something like that. I mean, it's always just like, wow. So I'm sorry, those are really that's really hard to match those examples I gave, but you could just really show the DNA of the organization is about helping people, and then offering those opportunities either with your organization or just in the community, and just having that firsthand, and if it's not firsthand, just telling those success stories that are just really, really powerful. I mean, even if you say you have a funder and you have they send you your evaluation form in advance, and say that success stories or what have you are not one of the questions, still have them prepared. I should have put that in the slideshow, because there's a way to work it in, and hearing those stories again is just so different than reading numbers in a report. So when you hear those stories, like you could see they stick with me years and years later. And when we were, for example, Michelle and I were at our board dinner, because we do a yearly dinner with our board, it was tail end of site visit season. And so off the cuff, our president and CEO asked, Melissa, could you tell that story you told me earlier? And I told like 4 stories, because again, I'm just always so proud of our partners and all the incredible work that they're doing in the community. And, I mean, pretty much there's no dry eye in that place, right, during that dinner. And our board is, again, feeling that impact, and we're demonstrating the power that these programs are having in the community.
Great, thank you, Melissa. And John sort of reiterated that. He said the funders visiting his school meet the students and fall in love with the school, so it makes his job a lot easier. So we should all be, I guess, identifying participants in our programs that can sort of help us during these site visits and make sure we have them, prepped and ready for the visit.
And if you have staff, that have lived experience, even if it's not with that particular program, but if your staff are, program folks that are, willing to, and of course, obviously don't put anyone in a comfortable position, but folks that are willing to speak upon that lived experience, again, that's just really powerful. You're just demonstrating this is an organization that, has folks that really understand with first person experience. Another one, we work with Exodus Transitional Services. About 90% of their staff are former participants. Like, I mean, that these folks have been there and they're doing everything they can to help their participants. Lisa?
I have a question. Thank you so much, Melissa. This has been great. So years ago, I worked for an agency that operated a school for children with autism, and their board were all volunteers. And the treasurer, she was a CPA and she certainly had worked outside the home, but I guess at this point she wasn't. And she actually showed up for the site visit wearing jeans, and I was mortified. I mean, I don't think it affected our funding. The proposal was done really well. And because, it was a school, it was 3 people that, were able to go around on the site visit, and they were able to watch the kids making brownies and, so it was nice. But I just was so mortified. And after that, I actually just created kind of like a checklist, and on it, I wrote, please dress professionally, So I just kind of want to throw that out there, because I feel like I could write a book about, the worst possible case scenarios and just get your response to that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa. That's an interesting one, because I feel like we were joking before all of you got on about how I'm wearing, professional up top and professional sweatpants below, right? So I wonder if just because of the pandemic, we've all gotten cozier. So I don't know if that would be as much of an issue today, but obviously everyone should be putting their best foot forward and looking professional. And I think that there's some organizations, like when we go out to visit Poughkeepsie Farm Project, we're obviously everyone's going to be dressed down. We're on a farm. But if we're going more into an office, if everyone was dressed really low key, I don't know, I guess it could make more of a negative impression, but I think making sure, I love your idea of having a checklist in advance, and for the folks that are going out, the board members and whomever you're including, just having everyone be on the same page, show up 10 minutes early, have questions, have stories to share, all of that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Whatever you want to make that impression, make sure that it's not just here, right? Everyone that's going to be there knows what you expect of them. So I love that idea.
And also never make sure no one says during a site visit with a funder, if the funder says, if we're not able to provide this money, will you still be able to run the program? And don't ever say, oh yeah, no, we'll be okay. Because that has happened to a friend of mine.
Right. That's a great question. And also on the other end, and I know, and Michelle and I always talk about this, how with that question of if you don't receive the funding, how are you supposed to run? It's always you want to make sure you answer it the correct way, because you don't want to show we don't need your money. But at the same time, you don't want to show that you're really desperate for it. Right. So we've had, that is one of our questions on our application. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold and I'm still like that. I've had organizations, right? If you don't fund us, we won't exist. And that's not, we don't like, so neither extreme is good. It's delicate, but somewhere in the middle. and talking about, and I think, was it John that brought up earlier? Also talking about just like how if you have additional dollars, right? You can expand, you can do all these great other things if you have this additional funding too. So again, it's definitely a fine line, but yeah, absolutely not being like, yeah, we're cool, we don't need your money, but also being like, yeah, you're our only funder, please give us the money or we won't do any of this, because then that makes people really nervous, especially we give grants for 1 year. Unfortunately, we'd love to do multi-year funding, but you know, it's everything's been difficult the last 3 years, right? So we're figuring that out internally. But for us, you know, to be the only funder and know that a organization is completely reliant on our funding and the program won't exist it's a lot to take on. And what happens to the participants next year if we can't fund them?
I always try to give the CEO or one of the board members, you know, just a little soundbite to say, you know, your funding has really helped us leverage other funders.
Yeah,
you know? And I would ask them to please practice that, you know.
That's great. And I love the idea too of having people just being on the same page, knowing the expectations, practicing that is great. And yes, leveraging is wonderful too. I mean, we love to tell that story too, how we've been able to provide small amounts, you know, pilot programs, seed money, what have you, to programs, and they've been able to demonstrate with our small amount of money the impact that they have, and then they go after these $100,000 state grants and what have you, right? And so this it also is helpful too, because if the state grant, you know, who the other funder, whomever they are, may not have considered this program before if it didn't have, you know, local funders attached to it. But now that they see local funders like us are attached to it, they're more likely to say, okay, they've been vetted by United Way. You know, other funders have invested in them. They've been doing, you know, they have this longstanding relationship, what have you. And so this is really helpful to leveraging those partnerships. So yeah, leverage is also a great word. I'm sure you all use it in all your applications that you're reading a lot. It's one of those buzzwords that we all use. So thank you.
All right. Any other points? These are all great points. All right, then, Melissa, thank you so very, very much. We appreciate it. I dropped a link to a survey. We're going to email that to you as well. And we wish you all a great afternoon, many successful site visits, and go out there and win some grants. Anybody have anything else to add?
Thank you again for having me, and thank you all for what you do every day.
And you too.
Yeah, thank you. You all seem wonderful, and I just really appreciate your time today.
All right.
Likewise. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
And
Melissa.
thanks so much to Michelle for suggesting you and for asking you on our behalf.
Of course, anytime.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right.
Can stop the recording, Allison, I think.
Yes.
Thanks, Melissa.